Racist waitress refuses to serve Snoop Dogg, but what happened next shocked everyone. The bustling diner was busy, full of conversation and clinking silverware. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee and sizzling dishes filled the air. Snoop Dogg, dressed casually in a hoodie and sunglasses, walked in, his presence immediately noticeable. He'd just come from a meeting and was looking for a quiet spot to eat. He had become accustomed to the attention, but today he simply wanted to relax. The hostess greeted him with a warm smile and showed him to a table by the window. He took a seat, glad for the chance to unwind for a few minutes. However, not everyone in the diner was as welcoming. Samantha, a young waitress with an air of superiority, took notice of Snoop. She didn't recognize him immediately, but something about his laid-back demeanor seemed off to her. As she approached the table, she glanced at him for a moment, her lips curling into a small frown. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice cold, "but we don't serve people like you here." Snoop blinked, taken aback. He'd experienced prejudice before, but this was different, blatant, unapologetic racism. "Excuse me?" he asked, his tone calm but confused. "You heard me," Samantha replied, not backing down. "We have a certain standard here, and you don't fit it." Snoop slowly lowered his sunglasses and looked her directly in the eyes, his expression shifting to one of quiet understanding. "You sure you know who you're talking to?" Samantha didn't flinch, her arms crossed in defiance. "I know exactly who you are. You don't belong here." Snoop let out a small chuckle. "You don't know anything about me, but you're about to." The room seemed to freeze for a moment, all eyes now on the exchange happening at the center of the diner. Snoop leaned back in his chair, folding his arms, his calm demeanor remaining. "You know," he began, "I could just walk out of here and let it slide. But something tells me you're not gonna learn anything that way." Samantha stood her ground, her face hardening. "I'll call the manager if I have to," she said, her voice sharp. Snoop smiled slightly, his gaze unwavering. "Go ahead, call whoever you want. But I don't think you'll like how this turns out." Just as Samantha moved to step away, the manager, Kathy, appeared from behind the counter, having sensed the tension building. She walked over, eyeing both Snoop and Samantha. "What's going on here?" Samantha quickly explained the situation, her voice dripping with indignation. "This man doesn't belong here. I refuse to serve him." Kathy's face softened as she turned to Snoop. "I'm really sorry about this. Let me get someone else to help you." Snoop raised a hand to stop her. "No need. I don't need anyone else." His gaze shifted to Samantha. "But I think you should take a step back." Samantha opened her mouth to argue, but Kathy, sensing the seriousness of the situation, intervened. "Samantha, step aside for a moment, please." There was a brief moment of hesitation, but Samantha finally complied, her face flushed with embarrassment. Kathy gave Snoop an apologetic glance. "Let me find you another server. You've had enough trouble today." Snoop nodded but didn't move, his eyes still on Samantha, who stood there, fuming with frustration. "Don't worry about me," Snoop said. "I'm not mad, just disappointed. But that's not for me to deal with. It's for you to figure out." As Kathy walked away, Snoop remained seated, watching as the other diners exchanged uncomfortable glances. It was clear that they were witnessing something rare, a real-life lesson in humility and respect. After a brief moment, Snoop stood and approached Samantha. The diner's hum seemed to fade, the surrounding voices growing quieter. "Listen, I don't know what happened for you to feel the way you do," Snoop began. "But the world's got a lot of judgment, a lot of hate. You don't have to be part of that. You've got a chance to be better." Samantha looked at him, her arms still crossed, but there was a shift in her eyes. She wasn't angry anymore, just confused. Snoop stepped a little closer, his tone gentle but firm. "What you did today isn't just about me. It's about everyone else who had to watch. People like you, people like me, we're all just people." The silence hung between them for a moment. Samantha opened her mouth to respond but couldn't find the words. "Take a second," Snoop continued, "and think about what you're doing. You've got power in how you treat people, and that's something that sticks with you. Don't let this be the kind of day you look back on and wish you did better." He turned to walk away, but before he could take another step, Samantha spoke up. I, I'm sorry, she said, her voice softer than it had been. I don't know why I acted like that. It was wrong. Snoop paused, his back still turned to her. He didn't say anything at first but then gave a small, knowing nod. I'm not mad at you, he said without looking back. But I am disappointed. You've got to do better. We all do. He walked out of the diner, leaving behind a room full of people who were now deep in thought. The message was clear, and even though the moment had been tense, there was something profound about how it ended. Samantha stood there, her head lowered, the weight of the conversation settling on her shoulders. She felt a change, a shift she hadn't expected but desperately needed. Back outside, Snoop walked through the parking lot, his footsteps slow but purposeful. He wasn't sure if he had changed anything today, but one thing was certain, it had felt like the right thing to do. As he stepped into his car, he glanced over his shoulder at the diner. For a moment, he wondered if Samantha would ever look at people the same way again. Would she learn to treat everyone with dignity? Or would the old habits creep back in? But Snoop wasn't concerned. He had planted a seed, and that was all he could do. The rest was up to her. As the car pulled away, he caught a glimpse of a few onlookers watching him go. The whispers started, but this time, they were different. People were talking about more than just the celebrity who walked in. They were talking about the moment of change they had just witnessed. In the days that followed, Snoop Dogg's visit to the diner became a topic of conversation all around town. The incident wasn't just about the confrontation between him and Samantha. It was about the lesson everyone seemed to have learned without realizing it: respect, humanity, and second chances. For Samantha, the lesson had been a wake-up call. She found herself replaying the moment over and over in her mind, trying to understand how she had let her bias cloud her judgment. The realization hit her hard. What had she really done? She wasn't just rude to Snoop, she had shown disrespect to someone who had nothing but kindness in his heart, despite everything. The next day, Samantha stood in front of the mirror at her apartment, deep in thought, still struggling with the shame of her actions. The more she thought about it, the more she realized how her behavior wasn't just an isolated moment. It was a symptom of something much bigger. She hadn't just acted out of ignorance. There had been a deep-rooted assumption about who people like Snoop were simply because of his appearance, his fame, and his lifestyle. And it wasn't just him. Her perception of people from different walks of life had been narrow, shaped by prejudices she didn't even fully understand. Samantha had grown up in a sheltered environment, where her interactions with others were limited to a small circle of people who looked, thought, and acted just like her. Her worldview was narrow, and she had never questioned it, until now. I messed up, she whispered to herself, barely recognizing the woman staring back at her in the mirror. She couldn't undo what had happened, but she knew one thing: she had to change. Not for Snoop, not for anyone else, but for herself. She wasn't going to let this moment define her, she was going to learn from it. Samantha arrived at work the following day, her head held high but with a slight nervousness in her step. The other waitstaff had heard about the incident, of course, and while some had expressed their shock over the situation, others were still gossiping about it. But this time, there was a different kind of tension in the air. She didn't expect things to be easy. She knew she had to prove herself, not just to her coworkers, but to herself. And maybe to the world too. The world wasn't forgiving, especially when you made a mistake as big as this one. The manager, Kathy, noticed her entrance and gave her a quick nod. "Samantha," Kathy said softly as she walked past her. "I hope you've learned something from this." It wasn't an accusation, just a quiet observation. Samantha nodded, her voice steady. "I have." As the morning went on, Samantha found herself observing the other customers more carefully. She watched the way people from all backgrounds interacted with the waitstaff, the way some treated her with respect, while others treated her like an invisible entity. She noticed how easy it was to disregard people, to act as though their worth was defined by their job, their clothes, or the color of their skin. The realization hit her like a ton of bricks. Why have I never seen it this way before? Samantha thought. Why had she assumed the worst of someone like Snoop, a person she didn't even know? Why hadn't she paused to think about how her actions impacted others? The customers who walked into the diner that day were no longer faceless strangers to her. Every smile, Every word exchanged mattered. She wasn't going to let herself fall back into that old mindset. She was done with the prejudice and bias that had once shaped her worldview. Later that afternoon, Snoop Dogg returned to the diner. It wasn't for the food, he had something else in mind. He didn't expect to see Samantha again, but as he stepped through the doors, his eyes quickly found her standing near the counter. She wasn't just working, she was genuinely smiling, genuinely interacting with customers. And it was different this time. He could sense it. The air in the diner had changed. There was a new energy, a new sense of respect flowing between the staff and the patrons. Snoop approached the counter, greeted by the hostess with a smile and a wave. But his attention was on Samantha. She saw him too, and for a split second, her face flushed with discomfort. Snoop smiled warmly, walking over to where she stood. "How's it going?" he asked. Samantha turned, surprised, but then gave a small smile of her own. "It's better. Thank you for what you said last time." Snoop leaned against the counter casually, his presence as laid back as ever. "It's all good," he said. "You took the words to heart. I can tell. Keep it up." Samantha felt a weight lift off her chest. The guilt that had been hanging over her was slowly starting to dissolve. She had done something wrong, but now she had the chance to make it right. "You know," she said, "I've been thinking a lot about what happened. I've learned a lot from you. It's not just about this job or this place. It's about how I treat people. You taught me that." Snoop nodded, his usual calm and reassuring demeanor in full force. "I'm glad to hear that," he said with a smile. "But you've got to learn to teach yourself too. We all mess up, but it's the recovery that matters." Samantha nodded. "I won't forget it." Word spread quickly through the diner about Snoop's brief but meaningful interaction with Samantha. Staff members whispered amongst themselves, their attitudes shifting. The realization that they, too, needed to reflect on how they treated people started to settle in. If Snoop Dogg, a global superstar, could approach people with kindness and understanding, so could they. As the weeks went by, the change was undeniable. Samantha, once known for her haughty attitude, became one of the most respectful and friendly waitresses the diner had ever seen. She made a conscious effort to treat everyone with dignity, no matter their background, their job, or the way they looked. Her co-workers noticed. The diner, once filled with the usual cliques and biases, had become a more welcoming environment. And even Kathy, the manager, couldn't deny that there was a shift in the energy. Samantha wasn't the only one who had changed. The entire staff had begun to reflect on how they treated customers and each other. The incident with Snoop had opened their eyes, not just to racism but to the everyday ways people could neglect the importance of kindness and respect. One day, weeks after the initial incident, Snoop Dogg returned to the diner. He wasn't just passing through this time, he was in town for an event and wanted to grab a meal. He walked in, and the atmosphere had already shifted. Samantha was there, serving a table in the corner, laughing with a regular customer. She glanced up and saw Snoop standing near the counter. She smiled, stepping toward him. "Back for another round?" she joked. Snoop grinned. "Why not? The food here's good, but I'm more interested in seeing how things are going." Samantha gestured to the room. "It's been better. A lot better." He nodded, looking around the diner. The difference was noticeable. The atmosphere felt more open, more inclusive. People were genuinely enjoying their meals, not just in passing but engaging with the staff and each other. "You know, you're doing great," Snoop said, his voice full of appreciation. Samantha paused, surprised. "You think so?" He nodded. "Yeah. You've got a way about you now. You've got respect. It shows." Samantha smiled, the weight lifted completely from her shoulders. She wasn't just a waitress anymore. She was someone who had learned something, changed because of it, and was now passing it on. "Thank you, Snoop," she said. "You didn't just change my day, you changed my life." Snoop chuckled. "That's what it's all about, right? Making the world a little better, one step at a time." And as he sat down to eat, he knew that his visit had done more than just raise awareness. It had sparked something bigger than anyone could have predicted. What started as a single moment of tension had rippled outward, touching lives in ways Snoop couldn't have imagined. Months passed since that day Snoop Dogg walked into the diner, and Samantha's life had changed dramatically. She had become a different person, not just in the way she treated others, but in the way she viewed herself. Her perspective had shifted. The incident had been a wake-up call, and the lesson she learned wasn't just about racism, it was about humanity. Samantha found herself more empathetic and aware of her biases. She began reflecting on her upbringing, questioning the world she had been exposed to, and realizing just how little she had known about the struggles that others faced. Her relationships with her co-workers improved. Once distant and standoffish, she was now more approachable, more willing to listen and understand. It wasn't just her actions that had changed, it was the way she saw the world. Every day, she made a conscious effort to be better, not just for her own sake, but for everyone around her. One morning, during her shift, a regular customer came in. He was a middle-aged man, a bit gruff but always polite. He sat down, and Samantha noticed the familiar look of stress on his face. He had recently lost his job, and she knew he was going through a rough time. She walked over to his table, offering a genuine smile. "Hey Bill, how's your day going?" He shrugged, looking tired. "It's getting better, I guess. Just another tough week." Samantha sat down beside him for a moment, something she would have never done before. "You know, I've been thinking about you lately. I know things are tough, but I just wanted you to know you're not alone. Whatever you're going through, you've got people here who care." Bill blinked, clearly surprised by her open kindness. He had always been gruff, but something about her words resonated with him. "Thanks, Samantha," he said quietly. "I appreciate that more than you know." This was the kind of change that had been sparked by that single moment in the diner with Snoop Dogg. A ripple effect. Her new outlook on life wasn't just affecting her, it was affecting everyone she interacted with. The diner, too, was undergoing a transformation. Samantha was no longer the only one who had changed. Over time, the entire atmosphere had become more inclusive and welcoming. The staff, once set in their ways, had started following her example. They treated everyone with respect, regardless of their appearance, their job, or their background. The sense of community that had been missing before was slowly becoming a foundation of the diner's culture. Kathy, the manager, had been keeping a close eye on the changes. At first, she had been skeptical. She'd always seen Samantha as the troublemaker of the team, but now, she saw someone who had taken responsibility for their actions. She had learned from her mistakes and was actively making a difference. One afternoon, Kathy pulled Samantha aside. "You know," Kathy said, "I've been watching you, and I've got to say, I'm impressed. You've really turned things around here." Samantha smiled, though there was a hint of modesty in her expression. "I've just been trying to do what's right. I guess it's working." Kathy gave her a knowing look. "It's more than that. You've helped change the whole vibe here. People are more engaged with the customers. They're treating everyone like they matter." She paused before adding, "I've had a lot of people thank me for the way the staff's been handling things lately." "That's your doing." Samantha felt a swell of pride. She hadn't expected this kind of recognition, but it meant the world to her. "It's not just me though. Everyone's stepping up." Kathy nodded, her expression softening. "True, but you've been the spark that started it all. Keep it up." Snoop Dogg, meanwhile, had no idea the full extent of the impact his visit to the diner had caused. He had simply been trying to get a meal, but in the process, he had changed lives. It wasn't the first time his presence had made a difference, but it was one of the most meaningful. He had no idea that Samantha's shift in attitude would ripple out to affect everyone in the diner and beyond. People were starting to talk about what happened that day. Some saw it as an example of celebrities using their influence for good. Others saw it as a reminder of how small actions could spark big change. One day, Snoop received a message on social media that caught his attention. It was from a woman who worked at a community center, thanking him for his influence on Samantha. The message read, "I don't know if you realize what you did that day at the diner, but I do. Samantha has been coming to our center, volunteering with the kids, and helping us organize food drives. Her attitude has completely changed, and it's because of you. You reminded her that kindness and respect matter, and that it's never too late to learn. Thank you for being that spark." Snoop sat back, reading the message again. He didn't respond immediately. He didn't need to. But he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride that the words he'd shared with Samantha had led her to a place of growth and change. As the weeks turned into months, the changes in the diner became even more evident. Samantha had become more than just a waitress. She was now a leader in the community. Her efforts to treat everyone with kindness, empathy, and respect had spread far beyond the walls of the diner. One evening, as she stood behind the counter, handing out orders, she saw a family walk in, a mother, father, and their young daughter. They took a seat, and Samantha immediately recognized them as one of the families who had been impacted by the wildfire a few months ago. The family had lost their home, but through the help of community efforts, they were slowly starting to rebuild their lives. Samantha walked over to their table with a smile. "Hey there. It's great to see you again," she said warmly. The mother smiled, her face lighting up. "We were just talking about how much we appreciate everything the community has done for us. It's been a tough road, but we're getting through it." Samantha nodded, her heart swelling with pride. "You're not alone. We're all in this together." The father reached out and shook Samantha's hand. "We don't know how we would have made it through without the support of people like you. You've made a difference in our lives." Samantha felt a lump form in her throat. She wasn't just providing food to people, she was offering hope, compassion, and connection. That was worth more than anything she could have imagined when she first started working here. As she walked back to the kitchen to prepare their meal, she paused for a moment. This was the community she had always wanted to be a part of, one built on kindness, respect, and understanding. And it wasn't just a community within the walls of the diner. It was something that stretched far beyond, touching the lives of people in ways that would last. One afternoon, Snoop Dogg found himself back in town for another event. He had been hearing about all the positive changes in the diner from his friends, so he decided to stop by once more. This time, when he walked through the door, it felt different. The atmosphere was lighter, more relaxed. The energy had shifted in ways he couldn't have predicted. Samantha spotted him right away as he walked in, and a smile crept across her face. She quickly made her way over to his table. "Well, look who's back," she said, setting down a glass of water in front of him. Snoop grinned, leaning back in his seat. "I couldn't stay away. The food here is too good to miss." They both laughed, but there was a deeper connection between them now, a shared understanding of what had transpired in the past months. Snoop looked around the diner. "I see things are different here," he said, his voice warm. Samantha nodded, her eyes shining. "Yeah, we've all changed. And it started with you." Snoop's eyes softened. "I'm just glad to know I could make a difference, even if it was small." "You've done the real work, though." Samantha smiled, the weight of his words filling her with gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you." As the two of them sat there, sharing a moment of quiet reflection, the diner continued to buzz with activity. The community had been reconnected, and in that moment, it was clear that something truly special had been created. This wasn't just about one incident, it was about a movement, a shift in how people saw each other, and how they could learn and grow together. In the weeks that followed, Samantha continued to make strides in her personal growth. But more than that, she had become a catalyst for change not only within the diner but in the larger community. The conversation sparked by Snoop's visit wasn't over, it was just beginning. Samantha started volunteering at a local community center, working with kids who came from tough backgrounds, many of whom were dealing with prejudices of their own. It was hard for Samantha at first. She had her own biases to confront, but each day brought something new. She saw how kids could be shaped by their environment, how prejudices could be learned, but also unlearned. Samantha was teaching these kids the same lesson Snoop had taught her, to look beyond appearances and treat people with dignity and respect. One afternoon, after finishing up a session at the community center, Samantha was walking back to her car when she was approached by a familiar face, Bill, the regular customer she had spoken to a few months earlier. "Hey, Samantha," he called out. Samantha turned around, smiling. "Bill, what's up?" Bill walked over to her, his hands stuffed in his pockets, his expression thoughtful. "I just wanted to thank you again for what you said to me a while back. It really stuck with me. I've been going through a rough time, but it made me rethink how I treat others. I've been trying to be more positive, and, well, I guess I just wanted you to know you made a difference." Samantha's heart swelled. She hadn't expected Bill to come back to her and thank her, but it meant more than she could say. She'd made an impact on him just by taking the time to care. "Bill, I'm really glad to hear that. I think it's all about being kind, every day. Even the smallest gesture can change someone's world." Bill smiled, his tired eyes brightening a bit. "I think you're right. I'm still learning, but I'm getting there." "That's all any of us can do," Samantha said, offering him a reassuring smile. Bill nodded, and for a moment, the weight of his past struggles seemed a little lighter. Samantha had helped him see the value in every interaction, no matter how small. She had helped him break down the walls of anger and bitterness that had built up over time. It wasn't just about fixing one mistake, it was about creating a new pattern of behavior. Meanwhile, back at the diner, the changes were starting to ripple through the entire business. The atmosphere had shifted from one of awkwardness and indifference to a more welcoming, open environment. There was an energy in the air that was palpable, the kind of energy you only get when people are genuinely invested in making the world a better place. Kathy, the manager, began noticing that there were more regular customers coming back, and not just for the food. They came because the vibe in the diner had changed. They came because they felt comfortable there, because they knew they were welcomed. One evening, as the dinner rush slowed down, Kathy pulled Samantha aside. "I've been meaning to talk to you," she said, her voice serious but filled with appreciation. "You've been doing amazing work here. I've noticed a huge difference in how people are responding to you, to all of us. I think it's time we celebrate that." Samantha raised an eyebrow. "Celebrate? What do you mean?" Kathy smiled. "I want to host a special event, a night where we show the community what we've been working on. Let's have a respect and inclusivity night. We'll invite everyone, new customers, regulars, the community center kids, even the local schools. A night where we can celebrate kindness and highlight how much we've all grown as people. What do you think?" Samantha was taken aback. It was a huge idea, one that would bring a lot of people together, but it felt right. She had been working hard, learning, growing, and now it was time to put those lessons into action. "I love it," she said. "Let's do it." The planning for the event began right away. The diner was going to close its doors for a few hours and invite the community in for a night of celebration. There would be speeches, music, and a dinner menu filled with all the best dishes the diner had to offer. But it wasn't just about the food, it was about the people coming together, sharing their stories, and acknowledging the power of respect. Snoop Dogg was invited, of course, as the man who had started it all, but no one expected him to show up. He had already done more than enough. But Samantha was hopeful. She knew how much his influence had meant to this community, and maybe, just maybe, he would show his face again. The night of the event arrived, and the diner was buzzing with excitement. The atmosphere was electric, filled with laughter, music, and the sounds of people reconnecting. Families were coming in, talking to old friends, and catching up with one another. It felt like a real community event, and Samantha could feel the pride swelling inside her. Kathy was at the front, greeting guests with a big smile, while Samantha was at the back of the restaurant, making sure everything ran smoothly. She'd put in so much effort to ensure this night went off without a hitch. And as the evening went on, she realized just how much the community had changed. People were talking to each other, listening, and connecting in ways they hadn't before. The walls of separation between different groups were falling down, and for the first time in a long while, the diner felt like more than just a business. It felt like home. As the speeches began, Kathy took the stage first. "Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. We've gone through a lot of changes in the past few months, but tonight isn't about us. It's about all of you, the people who made this transformation possible." The room filled with applause. Samantha stood at the back of the room, smiling as Kathy spoke about the growth they had experienced together. It felt surreal. But just as Kathy finished, the doors opened with a soft chime, and in walked Snoop Dogg. The crowd fell silent for a split second, and then erupted into cheers. Snoop smiled and waved, making his way to the stage. He looked relaxed as always, but there was a sense of humility in his step. He took the microphone from Kathy. "You know, I didn't expect all this," he began. "But I'm glad to be here." I see a lot of familiar faces and a lot of new ones, and that tells me something important. People change, and they change for the better. You've all made this place a home, and that's what matters. Samantha watched from the back as Snoop spoke to the crowd, his words genuine and humble. He wasn't just a celebrity. He was a man who had been part of something much bigger than himself, and now he was helping people see it. I don't have all the answers, but I know this, Snoop continued. The only way we make this world better is together. So let's keep doing what we're doing here, respecting each other, lifting each other up, and treating everyone with the dignity they deserve. That's how we win. The crowd erupted in applause once more, and Samantha felt the tears prickle in the corners of her eyes. This was what she had been working toward. Later that night, after the event had wrapped up, Samantha sat in the back of the diner, looking at the empty room. The event had been a success, no doubt about it. But it wasn't just the celebration that mattered, it was the change that had occurred. She had done something she never thought was possible. She had faced her own biases, confronted the prejudices that had once shaped her worldview, and begun to heal. It wasn't just a personal journey, it had been a journey that touched everyone around her. Snoop Dogg had walked into the diner one day, and now, because of that single moment, the entire community was different. It wasn't a simple lesson. It was a lifelong commitment to respect, to kindness, and to growing together. Samantha smiled to herself. This is just the beginning, she thought. I've got more work to do. But for the first time in her life, she felt ready. Samantha woke up the next morning feeling different. There was an unfamiliar lightness in her chest, a sense of fulfillment she hadn't known before. Last night's event had been transformative. It had not only brought the community together but also cemented her place within it. She had spent the entire evening reflecting on how far she had come, how much she had grown, and how much more she still had to learn. She dressed quickly, making her way to the diner for her shift. She was eager to start the day, to see the familiar faces of her coworkers and the customers who had witnessed the changes in her. The atmosphere in the diner felt different now, too. There was a sense of unity that hadn't been there before, and she could feel it in every exchange, every smile. When she walked into the diner, she was met with a warm greeting from Kathy. "Good morning, Samantha. I'm so glad you're here. The shift's already off to a great start." Samantha smiled, her heart swelling with pride. "Thanks, Kathy. I'm excited to get started." Kathy's expression softened. "You've really made a difference here. The vibe is just better. You've helped turn things around." Samantha felt a surge of gratitude. She wasn't used to receiving this kind of recognition, but she welcomed it. She had worked hard to change, to grow, and it felt good to be acknowledged for it. As the morning rush began, the diner filled with the usual chatter, the sound of silverware clinking, and the hum of the coffee machine. But today felt different. There was an energy in the air, one that wasn't just about serving food, it was about connection, about being present for the people around her. At one point, a family came in, a couple with their 2 young children. Samantha recognized them as regulars, but she'd never seen them quite like this before. The parents were smiling, laughing with their kids, their eyes bright with appreciation. Samantha approached their table with her usual warm smile. "Hey there. How's everything going today?" The mother beamed. "It's going great. You know, we just wanted to thank you again for everything you've done for us. You really turned things around. We came here last week, and it was just different. We could feel it in the atmosphere, and we wanted to let you know how much we appreciate it." Samantha blinked, surprised by their words. She had been so focused on her own journey that she hadn't fully realized the impact her actions had on others. "I'm glad to hear that," she said, her voice sincere. "That means a lot to me. I'm just trying to make this place a little better for everyone." The father nodded. "It's not just the food though. It's the way people treat you here now. There's just more respect. It's a small thing, but it makes a huge difference." Samantha smiled warmly, her heart swelling. "Thank you so much. That's exactly what I've been working for. I want everyone to feel welcome here, no matter who they are." The parents shared a glance, their expressions softening. "Well, you've certainly succeeded," the mother said. "We'll be back every week now. This is our new spot." Samantha's heart felt full. It was moments like this that reminded her why she had chosen to make a change. It wasn't just about changing her behavior, it was about changing the world around her, one small step at a time. Later that afternoon, as Samantha was preparing to wrap up her shift, Kathy approached her with a serious expression. "Samantha, can I talk to you for a moment?" Samantha turned to face her. "Of course, what's up?" Kathy motioned for her to step into the back office. "I've been thinking about something. We've had some really great feedback about the changes in the diner, and I think it's time to take it to the next level." Samantha raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Kathy smiled. "I think it's time for you to take on a more leadership role. You've really proven yourself, and I want to give you more responsibility. I was thinking about promoting you to assistant manager. You've been doing amazing work with the team, and I think you're ready for the next step." Samantha's eyes widened, taken aback by the offer. She hadn't expected something like this so soon. "Wow, Kathy, I don't know what to say. I'm honored." Kathy nodded, her expression sincere. "You've earned it. You've changed the way things are run here, and I think you're ready to lead others. We've got a good team, but I know you'll take them to the next level. What do you think?" Samantha took a deep breath, letting the weight of the offer settle in. She wasn't sure if she was ready, but deep down, she knew this was the next step in her journey. "I think I'm ready," she said, her voice steady. "Thank you, Kathy. I won't let you down." Kathy smiled, her eyes filled with pride. "I know you won't. I'm excited to see where you take this place." That evening, after her shift ended, Samantha sat in her car, the weight of the days sinking in. She had come so far, more than she could have ever imagined. A few months ago, she had been lost, unsure of who she was or where she was going. Now, she was leading a team, shaping the culture of the diner, and making a real difference in her community. She thought back to the words Snoop had said to her that day, "We all mess up, but it's the recovery that matters." She had recovered, but more than that, she had evolved. She had embraced the idea of growth, not just for herself but for those around her. Snoop's visit had been a catalyst, but it had been Samantha's own determination that had driven the change. She had realized that she didn't have to wait for someone else to create change. She could be the change. And now, as she looked out at the city skyline, she knew her journey was just beginning. Meanwhile, Snoop Dogg had been receiving messages from all over the country, and even from abroad, about the impact his visit to the diner had had. The message wasn't just about the racism Samantha had faced, it was about respect, about how a single moment of kindness could change everything. Snoop had always used his platform to speak out about social justice and equality, but this moment felt different. It wasn't just a cause he was promoting, it was a real-life example of change, something tangible that people could hold on to. One evening, as he sat in his studio, he received a message from a community leader in a town not far from Los Angeles. They wanted to know more about his thoughts on mentorship and how he could use his influence to help young people navigate the challenges they faced. The leader asked him to come speak at an event, a youth empowerment summit, to share his story and inspire others. Snoop smiled to himself. He had always believed in the power of mentorship and giving back to his community, but now it felt like an even greater calling. He knew that his words had the ability to change lives, just as they had with Samantha. It wasn't just about telling people what to do, it was about showing them what was possible. He picked up the phone and dialed the number. "Hey, I'm in. Let's make this happen." Samantha, now in her new role as assistant manager, was busy helping Kathy with the preparations for an upcoming community event. It was a celebration of everything they had accomplished in the diner over the past few months. The focus was on respect, kindness, and unity, the very values they had been working to instill in both the staff and the community. Samantha had invited local schools, churches, and community centers to attend. She wanted to create an event that brought people together, not just to celebrate what they had done, but to inspire others to take action in their own lives. As the event drew closer, Samantha began to feel the weight of her new responsibilities. There were a lot of moving parts to organize, but she was more than ready. She had grown into the role, and she was beginning to see just how much she could impact the world around her. The night before the event, as she sat in the diner, Kathy walked over to her with a small smile. "You're doing great, Samantha. You've really stepped up. I'm proud of you." Samantha looked up, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you and the team. We're in this together." Kathy nodded. "Exactly. We've built something special here." Samantha's phone buzzed with a new message. She opened it to find a notification from the community leader, confirming that Snoop Dogg would be attending the event as a surprise guest. Samantha's heart skipped a beat. She had never expected this kind of recognition, and she couldn't help but feel overwhelmed. This event was about bringing people together, and now it was going to be even more special. The night of the community event had arrived, and the diner was buzzing with excitement. It was no longer just a place to eat, it had become a symbol of change. The event was a celebration of respect, unity, and the power of small actions, and Samantha was ready to see the fruits of her hard work. She moved swiftly between tables, making sure everything was in place. The walls were lined with posters of inspirational quotes, artwork created by the kids at the community center, and photos of the people who had helped make the diner a beacon of positivity. Kathy was at the front, greeting guests as they walked in. The air was filled with chatter and laughter, a blend of excitement and nerves. As more people arrived, Samantha found herself standing at the entrance, watching the crowd begin to gather. She could feel the anticipation building. The event wasn't just about bringing people together, it was about showing the community what they could accomplish when they worked as one. This was bigger than just a diner, it was about making a real impact in the lives of those around her. As she looked around the room, she spotted a few familiar faces. Bill, the customer who had thanked her a few weeks ago, sitting with his wife and kids, the local school principal talking to one of the community leaders, and of course, her co-workers who were now fully invested in the mission they had set out to accomplish. But then her phone buzzed in her pocket. Samantha quickly grabbed it and saw a message from Kathy. "Snoop's here. He's ready to speak after dinner. Get ready, this is gonna be big." Samantha's heart raced. She had known Snoop would attend as a surprise guest, but now that he was actually there, it felt real. She quickly walked to the back to gather her thoughts before the crowd's attention turned to the real reason they had all come together. As the dinner portion of the evening came to an end, Kathy stepped up to the microphone, her eyes scanning the crowd. "Thank you all for being here tonight," Kathy began. "This event isn't just about celebrating the past few months, it's about celebrating all of you. You've made this place a home, and I couldn't be prouder of how far we've come together." The crowd applauded, and Samantha stood by the side, her heart full. She had worked so hard for this moment, and now she could finally see the results. But then, Kathy held up a hand. "Before we finish tonight, we have someone very special here to speak with us. A man who's shown us all what kindness and respect can do to change the world around us. Please welcome the one and only Snoop Dogg." The room erupted in cheers as Snoop Dogg walked up to the stage, his calm demeanor and signature swagger commanding attention. He smiled and waved to the crowd, but there was a genuine warmth in his eyes as he looked out at the faces of the people who had gathered. "Good evening, everybody," Snoop said, his voice smooth and steady. "I'm here tonight because I believe in what's happening in this room. I've seen the change you've all created, and I gotta say, it's incredible." The crowd went silent, hanging on his every word. Samantha felt a wave of pride wash over her. This was the man who had sparked it all. Snoop Dogg had played a role in changing her life, and now he was here to share his message with everyone in the room. "I'm not here to tell y'all how to live your lives," Snoop continued, "but I am here to remind you that every action you take matters. Every word you speak, every choice you make, it all affects the people around you. We can choose to be part of the problem, or we can choose to be part of the solution." Samantha's mind raced. She had heard Snoop speak before, but this time, his words seemed to resonate on a deeper level. This was more than just a speech, this was a call to action. "We're all human," Snoop went on, "and we all mess up. But that's not the end of the story. The real question is, what are you gonna do next? Are you gonna sit back and let things happen? Or are you gonna stand up and make sure you're doing your part?" The crowd was silent now, absorbing his words. Snoop paused for a moment, his eyes scanning the room. "I came here tonight to tell you all something I hope you'll take to heart. Don't wait for change to happen. Be the change. If you want to see the world be better, then start with yourself. Start with how you treat others." The room erupted into applause. People were on their feet, cheering, nodding, and clapping. Samantha felt a lump in her throat, overwhelmed by the power of his words. She had spent so long trying to change herself, but now, she understood what Snoop had meant. Change wasn't just personal, it was communal. It was about helping others see their worth and reminding them that they had the power to make the world a better place. "I'm proud of you," Snoop finished, his voice filled with emotion. "And I'm proud to be here tonight. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep spreading that love. And trust me, you'll change the world." With that, Snoop nodded to the crowd and walked off the stage, leaving the room buzzing with energy. The message was clear, and it was impossible to ignore. The change they had all experienced wasn't just about one man or one event. It was about the power of a community coming together to make a difference. The following weeks were filled with excitement and reflection. The diner had become a symbol of unity, and it wasn't just about the food anymore. It was about the people who walked through the doors. Every shift, every meal served, felt like part of a larger mission. And for Samantha, it was the first time in her life that she felt like she was living her purpose. Snoop's surprise speech had inspired the entire community. People started visiting the diner more regularly, not just for the great food, but for the environment that had been created. People came for the warmth, the acceptance, and the sense of belonging. Even Bill, the man who had first thanked Samantha, started bringing in his friends. They would sit at the same table every week, enjoying their meals and talking about the change they had seen in their own lives. And it wasn't just the customers who had transformed. The staff had too. Samantha, now in her leadership role as assistant manager, was working with her team to continue fostering an environment where kindness was valued above all else. She found herself mentoring the new wait staff, teaching them the lessons she had learned and encouraging them to treat every person who came into the diner with the respect they deserved. Kathy, too, had noticed the difference. She saw the way Samantha carried herself now, confident, but humble, with a true passion for what they were doing. Kathy knew that the diner had become something special because of the work they had all put into it. One day, Kathy pulled Samantha aside during a slow shift. "I've been thinking," Kathy began. "You've been doing such a fantastic job here. How would you feel about managing the diner full-time? We could expand the team and really make this place something even bigger." Samantha blinked, surprised by the offer. She had never imagined herself in such a role, but now that she thought about it, it felt like the next natural step. "You think I'm ready?" Kathy smiled. "I've watched you grow, and I've seen the impact you've had. I think you're more than ready." Samantha stood in silence for a moment, feeling the weight of the decision. But she didn't feel scared. She felt empowered, and for the first time in her life, she knew exactly what she wanted to do. "I'm in," she said finally. "Let's do it." With Samantha now officially promoted to manager, the diner underwent another transformation. She worked with Kathy to implement new initiatives, from offering free community dinners to hosting charity events aimed at giving back to local schools and families in need. The diner became a hub for the community, a place where everyone could come together, share a meal, and find support. And as for Snoop Dogg, he continued to check in with Samantha, offering words of encouragement and reminding her that the work she was doing was making a real difference. The diner had gone from being just another place to eat to being a beacon of change and unity, a place where kindness wasn't just a philosophy, it was the way people treated each other every single day.